July 10th, 2024. I will call to order tonight's meeting of the Norton Finance Committee and take a quick attendance. Okay, do we have Steve?
Yes.
Right. Tracy?
Here.
Sandy?
Here.
Bill?
Here.
Paul, I believe, will be absent this evening. Zach?
Here.
Bonnie? Not yet.
Can you hear me?
Bonnie, you here?
Yes, I am.
Yes. All right. And I too am here. Okay. I want to start real quick by just letting you all know that Joe Parker and Cody Thompson are no longer on our board. So I want to thank them for the time they've given to us, the years that they've given to us. And yeah, I just wanted to let you all know that. And so there are 2 open seats on our board, and our moderator is going to be taking applications for those seats, and hopefully they will be filled before we start meeting again in September. All right.
So, Paula, does that throw the reorg into a slight
Yeah,
issue?
I think, yes, I think it, well, how we normally do things, yes. The past few years or so, it has kind of been a seniority thing, and the vice chair has assumed the role of the chair. So yeah, right now we have no vice chair. So we will see how that works out when we reorg in September. Okay. All right, Mike, do we want to talk about the year-end bills?
Sure. So tonight we have 9 requests. There are 10 on the list, but since those were sent out to you, we don't need the elections request for $2,777. So the total number of requests will be $65,043. The first request is $52 for legal. The second request, data processing, $11,681. That's for a switch at the police station, because all the equipment that was there is moving to the new town hall, and as part of that, they would have lost some of the communication they have, so they needed a new switch. We tried to say it was part of the building project, but they weren't buying that, so we're gonna ask for a reserve fund transfer for that. The next request for the town clerk is $1,762, and that's to cover the costs for workers for the special election. Then snow and ice, $8,749. The Veterans Office, $1,773, and that was to cover a contractual stipend that the Veterans agent receives that she didn't account for in her budget. The wages for the rec department was short $566. The next one is interest on long-term debt. A miscalculation, and the request is for $9,460. Medicare tax, $21,000. The payrolls were higher than was budgeted for. And municipal building, $10,000. The main reason for that is, as part of the building project also, they put in the septic tank out back and tied us into the septic tank. But while we're tied into the septic tank, the pump, they didn't have electricity, and there was no pump to pump from the septic tank to the field. So we spent $13,000 pumping the tank during that time. So that's why the municipal building was short.
Okay, anyone have questions on any of these transfer requests?
Yes. So Madam
Steve?
Chair. So Mike, can you explain a little bit? So if I'm looking at Medicare tax, that's around a $1.5 million salary bump. What's driving it? I know you said that salaries were higher than normal, but that's kind of seems like a pretty high variance. And how many positions are we talking about?
So that would be in the entire town. And I know that the town budget increased for salaries 4%, and the schools were up 5.63%.
But they would have been budgeted in last year's budget cycle, right?
Right.
So what was it that drove? These are obviously expenses higher than what we budgeted for. So if we had the salaries budgeted for, what drove the increase of 1.5 million?
I think the main thing was when the budget was done, I don't think that the knowledge was there that the school budget was going to go up 1.679 for salaries. That's a hard thing to get down because they probably don't know until September what their total number is going to be either. And then the tax was never adjusted.
So are you saying that the school salaries went up 1.69% or
1,679,000, 5.63% from the previous year.
it went up 1 point? Do you know what the high level, just high level, what was that, new positions, or was it longer term employees, or what kind of drove that 1.69? Was it added staff?
It's probably a combination.
Is there a breakdown of that?
I don't have that.
Yeah. Okay. And then just on the municipal building, that 10, can you just explain that again? I'm sorry, I missed some of that, so.
Yeah, so as part of the building project, the new town hall and the fire headquarters and are all tied into one system in the highway department. And they put the tank in and they had to tie the other buildings, the highway and town hall and the fire department, into that tank. But the pump system to pump from the tank up to the field wasn't in operation for months after we were tied into the tank. So we had to keep pumping the tank whenever the tank filled up. So we ended up spending about $13,000 on pumping costs.
It just wasn't factored into the building project total spend?
No, they didn't expect it to be that long before they had full electric power.
Any potential recoverable in there? I know it's not a big dollar amount, but any potential recoverable in the contract?
I don't think so. We're technically responsible for getting electricity to the site, so they'll just use that.
No, thank you.
Yep.
Madam Chair.
Bill?
Thanks. Yes. Mike, to kind of continue on Steve's question on the municipal building. So even though there's a budget and there's a plan on, you got to do this, and this, it's the town's fault for not getting the electricity to the site, even though in the way that everything's being constructed, on this given day, the tank is installed? Wasn't there a check and balance to say, well, before you hook up these buildings, we need electricity?
Yeah, they didn't have an option because where they were working was where our field was. So the first thing they had to do was put in that tank so they could start working on the project. But that is my argument that the 13,000 was a result of the project. But one way or the other, the taxpayers are going to pay for it, and this way we're not borrowing it. So I guess.
Isn't there a project manager that kind of tick and ties the process?
Yeah, there's an OPM. Yep.
And they miss.
Like I said, where our field was, they had to go because that's where the project was being built. So there was no other option.
Well, I get the no option in like the time frame of it,
Yeah.
but I don't get that if there's a project manager that said person, entity, whatever, should know, that's going in, so we need electricity immediately at the site to make it all work. That's a project manager responsibility. Hence, they're not managing the project all that well.
Yeah, and they are at the whim of National Grid also. So, but
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Zach.
I'm like not to pile on, but for me, this is an overrun on the construction project. It doesn't belong here. I know you said you're not borrowing it, but obviously we know what the financial situation is in town. I think that should be put into the cost of the building project, not out of which is will wind up in free cash.
yeah, I mean, if we can convince them of that, we'll try. And if they agree, then this will go back to free cash. But in the meantime, we've got expenses we got to cover.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Bill.
one more thing on the data processing, where I think as you were going through it, you said, well, I'm trying to convince them of such. Who's they? Because again, kind of to Zach's point, isn't this more of a construction part of the building, expense to make sure that the police are connected to the new building?
I mean, that has been the argument that we've been using, that if all the equipment stayed there, the police department wouldn't need this. But because that equipment is moving out, we got to do this to keep their communications going properly. But they're not buying that one either. So we'll keep trying.
Yeah, who is
Who's
making
they?
this
Who's
decision?
the-
Yeah.
Thank you.
Building committee.
Has the select board been informed about this? Have they been asked?
Yeah,
What
I
do they
will.
have the ultimate say?
We'll be talking about it tomorrow night when we go over the year-end stuff.
Yeah, because this is $22,000, and it would have to come from our reserve fund, not free cash, like our reserve fund budget.
Yeah.
And what do we have left in that?
So going into tonight, you have $70,333.32. The requests are for $65,043. So the balance will be $5,290.32.
And
Madam Chair.
that's from FY '24, so that 5,000 would get turned back.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, Zach,
Are we voting on these individually?
I believe that we typically do have to do it individually. Yeah, I mean, for me, I'd rather see, you know, the 25 grand get turned back to free cash and that money get taken from our building project, so.
I just have a big concern about the oversight of the project. There's a lot of things going on there, right? So ultimately, Mike, is it the building committee that oversees the process, and how often do they communicate these kind of items to management?
Once a month.
And this just came up towards the end, or this is something that's been ongoing for a little bit?
It's been ongoing for a little bit. I'd say, with this switch, it's been at least 3-4 months.
And when did the project manager bring it up to the building committee?
I imagine it came up when we brought it up 3 months ago.
I just feel like everyone else that spoke here, this is a big miss from a management perspective. That's what we hired the person for, to see over these things with their expertise.
So we can go through, sorry, Sandy?
Mike, do you know what they have like left in their contingencies?
I don't off the top of my head, but it's a big number. But
Yeah, wasn't it running
That-
under
that-
budget, like 2 million or something?
that doesn't include the cost of tearing down the existing town hall, which they're getting prices on now.
And I thought that was about 800,000.
I think you're right. I thought it was around 850 at the time.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Bill.
So Mike, if the mood of this committee turns into we approve everything but 22,000 roughly in this request, wiping out data processing, wiping out municipal building, how does it get paid for? What's the backup?
It wouldn't get paid for. So I know, James, you want to talk on that?
Good evening. So it wouldn't get paid like Mike said. It would just go unpaid until further notice, I guess. It would just complicate things a little bit for us. I believe if the transfer goes through, free cash would be lower by that amount of money this year, but the amount of money we're going to be borrowing will be lower by that amount also, the final borrow that we have to do for the projects. So the taxpayers may be happy about that. It's one of those, that's all I have,
What's the process to release funds, release contingency funds?
What is the process? What release them for what? The contingency funds technically, so if the project is finished and they have money left over, we just don't borrow it.
Okay, but basically using contingency funds if everything else has been expensed to cover these unanticipated expenses. Is that an option, or?
That would be a vote of the building committee.
Chair.
Yeah,
Eventually, when the project is completed, when all of the bills are paid, the buildings are up completely. If there is $500,000 that was appropriated at town meeting that wasn't used, we could close that out and not ever borrow it. So that would be the end of the project. It would just come in $500,000 under.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Zach.
So I understand the building committee took it upon themselves to push this back to you? Is that what transpired with these two bills?
Yeah, they just said that that's not part of the project. And the big thing as far as the municipal building, we've already paid Soros. So, I mean, we're short. So if you don't approve the transfer for municipal building, we have an electric bill of $3,000, 2 bills for the water and sewer department, a $63 bill for trash and garbage removal at the Everett Leonard complex, $60,000 for water, and $974 for repair and maintenance of buildings.
Mike, sorry, say that again. So you've already paid these bills for
Suarez
the reserve transfer?
is already paid. That's not part of this. They're already paid. I was just using that as an example as one of the reasons that we're short. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bills we have to pay to other vendors. And that's why we're looking for the transfer.
Zach?
I guess that opens up more questions, Mike. Why would we pay the bill when you didn't have authorized funds?
Because the bills paid out of municipal building, we had authorized funds. I mean, we didn't, there's all kinds of things that are paid out of municipal building account. And as I said, there's now 6 bills we gotta pay. That's why we're looking for the transfer.
So, Madam Chair,
Yeah, Bill.
I hate to belabor this on what should have been a short meeting. But, so this is really coming down to the building committee is essentially saying that the septic whatever pumping would have been needed, new building or not, so therefore it's not part of the new building, even though if there was no new building, this probably wouldn't be happening. So it's really a building committee within the town is fighting the town to say, no, that's not part of this project. When in essence, if it weren't for the project, we wouldn't have the issue. Is that what I'm hearing? And does the select board get to override the building committee? Or does the building committee somehow have final say?
I would think that the building committee's overseeing the project. Now, if the select board wanted to override them, they possibly could. And that's, as I said earlier, we'll keep trying that route, and then this money would be returned to free cash.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, James.
since today is the last meeting of the fiscal year for you, for the board, I would suggest that they get approved as presented, and then maybe tomorrow if the select board decides that they're not in agreement that it should be part of the project, then we will let those funds close out to free cash the same way they would have closed out of the reserve, fund. Instead, they're gonna be closing out of the municipal building and out of data processing, but it's the same net effect at the end. But at least we will have approval and we would be able to pay our bills in case the select board agrees with the building committee tomorrow and decides that it should be paid out of the municipal building account and the data processing account. This would prevent us from going into deficit. And then, because the other alternative is if we do overpay it, those accounts, when I go to set the tax rate for next year, we would have to go to town meeting in October to reduce the budget for fiscal year 25 by that amount, by the 21,000, and it's kind of more work and unnecessary if you ask me. But that's just my opinion, and that's
So
about it.
we wouldn't have to meet again if the select board chose to, override using reserve fund transfer for this. We wouldn't have to meet again to change our vote on the amount of the reserve fund transfer.
No, because the fiscal year is already pretty much done, so those funds will just close out to free cash. But instead of closing out of the reserve fund, they will be closing out of data processing, 11,681, and out of municipal building, the other 10,000. That's assuming that Mike is going to bring it up tomorrow to the select board, and if they issue a directive to the municipal building committee, and everybody's in agreement, then that's going to be the end result.
Okay.
Madam
All right.
Chair,
Yes, Bill.
can we do a vote such that it's a yes to, and I haven't done the math yet, I'll do it if we can actually do it.
43,362 without those two.
There you go. So we vote a yes for that, pure and simple. Then we provide again, based on a vote, a contingent approval. However, said funds would not be released until the select board votes one way or the other. So if they're in favor of overriding the building committee, then it doesn't come out of this transfer. But if they're not, they're on record for voting no, it needs to come out of a transfer, a reserve fund transfer. Can we do that?
Mike, James.
I've never seen that being done before in my career. I don't know if that's allowed by law or not. I don't know if Mike knows better than me.
No, I would not think so. I would think, I'm just, as James said, if you vote it, you're just relying on us that the select board is going to do what they can to have the building committee overturn those two denials and have them fund that, and then this money would be closed out to free cash.
To me, it's easier to have something being held back versus giving it, hoping it's coming back. That's just me. But whatever.
I mean, it would, like James said, though, it would come back if the select board did choose to override the building committee, and in the data processing account and the municipal building account, that those funds wouldn't be spent at the end of the day if that happened. So that would come back.
But they have no incentive, really, to even give it a second thought. The money's there, move on. I mean,
Who, the
that's,
select board, you mean? Or
Yeah.
who doesn't have the incentive? Yeah.
yeah, there's no incentive if but, you know,
Yeah,
again, whatever.
Madam Chair,
yes, Andy.
is this on the agenda for tomorrow night, Mike?
Yeah, I've got the year-end transfers on the agenda.
So, okay, so they're gonna have to take a vote either way?
They don't have to take a vote either way, but I'll bring these two items up to them.
And do you know, did PBC actually vote on this, or was it just discussion?
I don't know, Sandy, to be honest with
Okay, you do not remember what meeting that was, do you? I know, I
No.
asked.
you. No.
All right, how shall we proceed, friends?
Madam Chair, I agree,
Yes, Steve.
but I think it's just gonna muddy the water. I think we have faith in our town management to at least have the conversation and move forward. However, it comes back potentially to free cash or gets spent. I think we have options that at this late time, I think I'm just gonna make a motion to recommend the transfer from the FinCom Reserve Fund for the following accounts as written.
Does he have
Second,
to say the total there, Mike, or no? The total of the $65,043 in the motion?
Yes. And if you don't mind, you just say, as written, deducting the elections, $162,570, $2,777. So the total $65,043.
All right, Steve, you want to take that from the top again?
Madam Chair, I recommend the transfer from the FinCom Reserve Fund as written, less the town clerk expense of $160.
Oh, I thought it was sorry. The
I
town
think
clerk, I
so.
thought it was the elections.
it's the election.
It's the election. Elections, count $162,570 for $2,777 for a grand total or a total transfer of $65,043.
Second,
Okay, motion and a second. Steve,
Yes.
Tracy? Yes. Sandy?
Yes,
Bill?
hesitant, yes.
Hear ya. Zach?
President, yes, also.
Right? Bonnie?
Yes.
Right. And I am a yes. 7 yes for this reserve fund transfer. Okay. Mike, do you have anything else for us?
Well,
Right.
just one thing, it's July 10th and we still don't know what the state budget is yet, so hopefully we'll know that by the time, I figure we'll start meeting probably September 9th for October. That'll be the Monday after Labor Day. So.
Yep.
We'll start meeting then for the October town meeting.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. We did have on the agenda tonight as well to discuss, as was brought up several times in the spring, financial policies that as a board, we may want to kind of put in place for ourselves to follow, for this fiscal year, not next fiscal year, this fiscal year. So I did send that policy manual. That was drafted like, it was before COVID, Mike, I think.
Yes.
Um,
So if you have any suggestions, or changes to the, plan that was approved by the select board, back then, let us know. We'd appreciate it.
does anyone have any specific
Any
feedback
questions
on-
you have,
Yeah,
Yeah, Madam Chair, so Mike, the select board did vote on that to approve that?
back,
I know it said draft for a while.
yeah. It shouldn't, it's not draft anymore, so I don't remember when it was, but it was like 4 years ago.
yeah, I don't think the FinCom ever got a final then, like,
Okay.
I searched back in the history of my email trying to find if there was like an updated copy, but that was the latest one we ever received and it said draft on it.
I'll send it to you without the draft on it, so make sure.
Were
you
there
have-
changes though, to what we
I don't
all
think,
reviewed?
I don't think there were any changes.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Andy.
can I suggest we look at the free cash policy and, just make, I know it's, you know, it seems kind of loose right now in terms of we will try to use it on on things that are only one-time use. I know in some other towns I was looking at that some towns do require any free cash that's used for a ongoing expense to be approved by a joint vote of select board, school committee, and FinCom. It just maybe gives us a little bit more, gets everybody to weigh in, right? So that we're all kind of
Yeah.
on page if we're gonna be, you know, approving money that's something for something ongoing. You know, I'd like for everybody to be weighing in.
Definitely, I agree with that as well. I think that, you know, the past few years in particular, we've been using, you know, turn back money that has come from, you know, kind of one-time things like the health insurance holiday. And then we've used that money for our recurring expenses in our budget. So I agree with Sandy where that should be, if we're going to be doing that going forward, we should have the select board and school committee in on those conversations. Because ideally, we really should not be using those non-recurring funds for our general budget. Does anyone want, Mike, do you have the financial policy manual? Do we want to share it? If anyone wants to look at any particular pages that caught their eye that they want to discuss?
Let me see if I can find it.
I know the other thing we had a lot of conversations about were things that were in articles as opposed to within the budgets. You know, that's listed as a separate article. I don't know if there's anything in the manual right now about that, or if we might want to add something if there's not.
Yeah, I didn't notice anything in particular about that, but that has seemed to be kind of common practice. I know that we discussed that a little bit, James mentioned too, where it's just kind of been a common practice where certain recurring expenses in certain town budgets are put in as articles instead of within those particular department budgets. But it'd be good if, Mike, if there was any way you or James could put together a list of those, just to kind of, so we can have it all fresh in our memories. Those articles that we typically see at each of the meetings that we're using free cash. I guess the one that I remember the most, just because I feel like we had a long meeting about it, was what was it, the auditing, the assessor's office one, where it was kind of like a program that we had to pay for every 3 or 5 years or whatever, and it seemed like an ongoing expense that we shouldn't be using free cash for. All right, anyone else thoughts? Ooh, Paul, I see you've joined us. You made it. Paul, can you hear us?
Yes, I apologize for like missing the whole meeting, but made it home.
Oh, did you just join us now?
Just joined and,
right,
I
great.
missed everything, so.
Oh,
I look forward to seeing the minutes.
well, yeah, you just missed our, the reserve fund transfers we just approved.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can definitely watch the video. We're just discussing the financial
All
policy
right.
manual. And if anyone has any questions, discussions, how we want to move forward for this FY25 and how we're handling free cash.
I know some of us were a little frustrated regarding not getting a lot of depth on the school budget, but again,
they're really an autonomous board in and of themselves. So I think that all we get to look at is the bottom line, really, Paula, but I'm not sure if that's a good thing. You know? That's my only take on this whole budget process from this last few months, you know, that it was.
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Zach.
just to follow up on Chief's comment, I mean, watching, only because my wife forces me to, because she's a teacher in another district, the finance committee meetings of that particular community. And touching on the school budgets, I mean, it's very, very different. And anybody can go on YouTube and watch some other communities, how they do it. But they're much more detailed and in-depth than what we're doing. For example, we're watching this a couple of weeks ago, and instead of the superintendent just coming and presenting a budget, I mean, they had the director of transportation, and they're going all through, the finance committee is going through bus routes and special education transportation, and they're questions to like, well, you're coming from the South Shore of Boston with this student, you're going through 7 communities. Have you reached out to those communities to see if you can share a ride? I mean, that level of depth. And then each principal presents the budget for their school, and then each department, I mean, it goes on for, just the school alone goes on for multiple meetings, sort of broken down like Mike presents it, police, fire, department. I would like to see the principals themselves come and say, okay, JCS, this was our budget last year, this was our personnel, this is what we need this year, this is our enrollment, we need an extra person because we have special needs, whatever it may be. A lot more detail. I mean, I was watching this, and it was almost a different planet to what we're doing.
That's interesting.
I mean,
Zach.
I would like to see at least department by department or school by school, each principal presenting their budget and what is it for administration, what is it, just similar to what, using the format kind of like Mike does, for each of the school buildings. I think that would give a little more transparency and insight to what we're looking at. Because it's very, the school's complicated, the budget's complicated. I know we're in a heated political debate, but it's the funding sources are complicated. We need to break it down so people, the 3 people that watch this, can understand it, let alone us alone.
No, I think that's a really good point, Zach. The other thing, I think we had maybe mentioned once this past spring that Mike, looking at the schedule, the budget schedule for next spring, can we make sure that the night that we're being presented the school budget, that's the only thing on our agenda? Because I really do feel like it kind of needs its own meeting.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Steve.
I just want the same sentiment that we talked about, but I agree with you. And I think honestly, to really understand the schools the way we should to make our decisions, I think one is to automatically get those budget versus actual, those transfers on a monthly basis. They've gotten a lot better, providing that so we can have follow-up and questions and understand their process. I think the other thing, it's going to be multiple nights. And really, the budget should be supported with all the supporting documentation. It shouldn't be an after-the-fact request that can't be done in a timely fashion. And then you get information that's not really what you asked for. After all the budgets have been completed, we voted on it. Personally, myself, I'm disappointed at the amount of information we received from the schools. We should have gotten detailed information very similar to every town budget that's provided. We have a salary schedule that lists out base salary, stipends, longevity, incentive pay that rolls up into the budget. The school is a request, and then you get pushback about where you can get that information. It's not the same information when I see about town report. That's historical done. This is supporting the current year that we're voting on, not historical. So for us to look at that, I would really push multiple nights, required information, not discretionary, or if they feel like providing it to it. It's what we want, or we don't vote on that budget. That's my feeling. I know it's kind of a hard stance, but I think it's necessary. Myself personally, I was disappointed by the amount of information we received from the from the schools overall.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Sandy.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Steve, that, the schools don't necessarily know what we're getting from, don't see the process or watch our meetings to know what we're looking for. I think we just need to be more specific on our end to lay out in writing, right, what it is, the beginning of the season, budget season. Maybe everybody sends their, request through the chair to the superintendent. This is what we're looking for. If we want to meet with principals, whatever the requests are, let's, get that in early. I just feel like we were doing a lot of last minute requests or expecting people to kind of, read our minds or know what we want. And we just need to be specific as to what it is we're looking for. And I know the things have been said verbally, but I think having it in writing makes it much more clear right at the beginning of the process.
Danny, I
Yeah,
agree, whatever we can
definitely.
make the process stronger, but we've been asking for a lot of this information for multiple years now. Basically, just provide us this detail, right? It's been in writing, it's been verbal, so why are we still talking about it at this point? That's just all I'm gonna say. I don't wanna go tit for tat on it, so.
Well,
Madam
Steve,
Chair,
they did provide, you saw the email, they did provide the salary breakdown. So I think, yeah, just making sure those expectations are put out there early on, for the schools. It was just unfortunate what everyone was dealing with, at the 11th hour, this past spring and April when, everyone was having to come up with 3 budgets and,
Again,
yeah, so.
and
I
early
think
on,
that-
we asked for it, right? So again, I wanna go tit for tat. The request they provided is not what we asked for. It's a piece of what we asked for, but not what we asked for. It doesn't satisfy my original request, if you will.
The
It's
salary breakdown they just sent?
Yep,
is
it's
it
only
what-
partial. That's a bottom line salary for each individual, which is a start. But the ask was to lay out all the details, just like we do for every town budget. Stipends, longevity, steps. Just look at the police, look at the fire, they provide that schedule all the way across for all those pieces, and then it rolls up into the budget line item. Again, I don't wanna go tit for tat, we're already past it. Whatever happens, happens, but I think going forward, that's the information we're gonna be requiring, and we should be meeting more frequently on the school department, as well as every other department. I firmly believe our committee should be a 12-month committee, not the peak time before an annual meeting or a town meeting, so.
I mean, we did meet jointly with them 6 times, in FY '24. Jointly with the school committee and with the select board, and then in addition to that, they came to at least 2 of our finance committee meetings. When we were going through the budgets, but we could definitely meet more often if that is the desire of the committee. We can meet jointly more often. I think that it would be more beneficial to be meeting jointly more often in February, and March, because that's when, they have their budgets, more finalized, and we know what our income is looking like, because meeting more frequently, I think in the fall, it doesn't really do much if they don't know what's really gonna be going on for the next fiscal year yet.
I think that's one of
Madam
the,
Chair,
Paul?
go ahead, Mike. What do you mean?
no, I was just gonna say, I think one of the things that should be done is we should agree on what revenue we project that we're gonna have first. And say, here's the revenue we have. Whatever needs are of departments is one thing, but we can't, this is all we can do. This is what we have for schools, this is what we have for town. So that's it, rather than have budgets come in looking for 12%, then it's not even a possibility. If we agree on the revenue amounts first and just say, you have to develop your budget based on this. Now, if you want to come and submit something different that says, if there was more money, I would like to have this. Well, that's not a possibility because we're not going to have the revenue.
So Mike, what's the earliest possible date that information? What that revenue projected will be for the next fiscal year?
I think usually, because we don't count that much on state aid, I would think, by the end of December, beginning of January, we should have a good handle on what our revenue is gonna be.
Madam Chair?
And then they have to submit budgets to you by when typically?
The departments submit them to me, by the beginning of February, and the schools in April, beginning of April.
Why the school so late? Remind me?
Just whatever's in the charter. It's so many days before town meeting.
And that's because they're doing their own budget work
Right.
at that time prior, so. Madam Chair, my comment was gonna be, I heard from a source that a current administrator was just given a 4% raise. And then another one of the banks of, people over at the schools was given 2.75 going forward. And I mentioned it last year, that the system's broke. You give away 2.5%, 3%, 4%, plus the steps, plus the slides and everything like that. It's not sustainable. There's something wrong with the overall model, with or without an override. It's just not a sustainable practice. And I'm not sure what the answer to that is and whether that's anything to do with our committee directly. But again, I heard from somebody that if they give somebody 4%, they should be taking and giving somebody else 1, then to get that net balance of 2, And again, I just can't believe that they're still gonna try to sweeten the pot, if you will, and give buyouts and things like that there for some of the administrators. I just don't think it's a sustainable model at the school side, and I'm not even sure on the town side, Mike, with some of the steps and stuff with the contracts, how much that bites you in the long haul when you're doing police and fire and stuff,
Yeah, those contractual negotiations with the unions, that is not something that this board has any really oversight over, any control over.
Well, no, but I wonder, Madam Chair, if there's something that we have to put in place, that, like Mike says, that they know that there's only X number of dollars that are gonna be available, and if they wanna give
Prior
a
to the
big raise like
negotiations.
union did or something, right, and then if they're gonna give more than that, and realize that it might be at the expense of personnel then, that there's only so much money to go, and again, the model has to be so that there's a way of balancing the budget year to year. And again, with or without the OR, and I think even if the 6.5 wins, they're back to having the same discussion next year or the year after, because there's gonna be a bigger ask than a 3%.
Now, Mike, you mentioned before that the contract negotiations usually happen in either May or October. Is that just for the town side? Do you know when the schools do their negotiations with the union?
It varies. Sometimes you're way ahead with some of the unions. So all the contracts on the town side go through June 30th, 2025, I think. So after that, we'd start negotiations that June. Right after the town meeting in June, if the contract ends at the end of that next fiscal year, we'd start negotiations then a year in advance.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Zach.
Yeah, in regards to the revenue discussion, why couldn't we know we're under for up 2.5? So, and we have some new growth. So can't we just say, we need a 3% budget from the schools, we need a 3% budget from the town. That's what you have to work with. And if there's extra revenue in the fall, we'll look at it and we'll appropriate where the need is. I think as a standard boilerplate, it should be, you need to come in with a 3% budget, because that's basically what we have. I don't know, Mike, how you feel about that,
So,
but certainly
mean,
speak up.
the problem I think would be too, is those fixed and shared budgets that could increase out of our control a lot more than the 3% too, so.
But we're
At the end of the
gonna
day,
be
they may
somewhere.
not be able to, what was that, Zach?
But again, if our growth is, we have about 2.5, and then you get some growth, and that varies year to year. I just think the base should be 3% total. For the total town budget at 3%, divide it 70-30, whatever the current formula is. And that should be the baseline. And then in the fall, look at it again. And back on the schools, we need a standardized way to present budget, just like I would start with what Mike gives us and what we get from police and fire. This is the staffing levels. And everybody should present it the same way, including the schools. We should go to them and say, here's the format we want. Please present your budget this way. And give them what we're looking for, not them just providing different things, and depending on who the administration is at the moment, we're getting different reports that are difficult to understand most of the time.
Madam Chair.
Steve,
And I agree with that. I think one of the biggest things, right, is overall, when we do talk about the schools, Mike lays down the rules of the budget, but the schools don't have to adhere his instructions, right? With all these discussions we've heard, a lot of the comments that we heard from town folks in our own employees, board committee members, etc., was the town manager has oversight of the budget. It's really hard when 70% of that budget does not provide the information that is one requested, or two in a standard format that automatically comes out. Here you are telling somebody to control the budget when you have the biggest department reports to a different body that doesn't have to provide information to the town side, which is tough. That makes it really, really hard, or really important that the finance committee has a neutral balance and has conversations ongoing and is educated on what goes in and what goes out of that budget, and the whole budget.
Madam Chair.
yes, Bill.
I don't want to see us kind of go down that rabbit hole of us versus them, and I'm kind of getting that sense at the moment in this conversation. So I think at a very high level, we as a committee should decide on what format we want the information to come to us in. Pure and simple. And hopefully it's not a big change for either side, or it's not that difficult to change, whatever they're doing, that we might want it slightly different. That way, everybody's getting treated fairly. And to Zach's point, I totally agree. I've been saying this, for a while. The math doesn't work. So with steps and longevity and blah, 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 you can try to be staying within a reasonable budget, but our growth is 3-ish%. So that's where you start. And beyond that, don't look at us to save you when you're approving 5% raises. Oh, but that didn't include the step and the longevity, so it's really 6. Because it's not sustainable. It's unfair to the townspeople to even have to listen about an override, if we're that messy in the whole process. And conversely, I'm not sure it's fair to the rank and file union members who are going to get all, gung-ho about, hey, we're going to get these raises. Some of you will get the raises because we're going to have to lay off some of you others to afford it.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Andy.
So I think, if you look at the steps and lanes, the chart, right? For teachers, I'm assuming it's probably similar for police and fire, or I know they have the same general format. You could give a 0% increase. And anytime there's movement on the chart, you could have up to an 8 or 9% raise. So, it's easy to say we should keep the raises, but because you have in a lot of cases a lot of inexperienced teachers, right? Younger teachers or newer teachers coming in, and we do have quite a bit of that in Norton. Anytime you have a brand new teacher, first year, going from step 1, lane 1, right, to step 2, you know, and over and going lane 3 or 4, getting their masters, whatever it happens to be. Again, you could be looking at a 10% raise without changing anything in the chart, without increasing anything in the chart, and giving a 0% raise. So I think that's not necessarily as easily, it's easier said than done, right? To say we need to keep the increases. I don't disagree that we need to find a way to make that work across all of those. And it's police, fire, and schools are all in the same boat, right? The police and fire requests were, I don't know, 8 or 9%, right, for the increases in salaries, something along those lines. So it's not just one. It's not just schools. Schools are just have way more employees, so it's a bigger hit. So I think that's one thing. Mike, you were saying before about having them design their budget, with a percentage in mind. I just don't think they're going to have the information they need to do that early enough. And I would think I would imagine that their first step would be to look at what their level services budget is, no matter what, right? And then go from there and say, okay, what do I need to cut back to get to the whatever percent? What I will say is that I think we spend too much time talking about the requests, and then we don't have enough time then to spend talking about the realities, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe we could just data dump all the requests all at once, give them, throw them in a folder, electronic folder or a binder. It doesn't matter to me if it's digital or physical. Have all those requests. We have the chance to go over them when we need to, and meet with whoever we need to ask questions. But then get to the point of, okay, well, this is what we're actually looking at for a budget. What cuts are you going to need to make? And I'd also like to see those laid out a little better, for every department, that in order to meet this budget, these are the things that we're going to have to cut, right? And put that in writing so that we can see, here was the requests, here are the cuts that need to happen to fit within whatever we're allocating.
I agree, Sandy. Correct me if I'm wrong, if we're on the same page, but what I'm envisioning is, so how starting in early March, I guess, we start to meet weekly, and we have maybe 4 or 5 departments that are on the agenda at each meeting. So, and that takes a while. I feel like that took up most of the spring, where we're just getting their requests, their kind of, wish list requests of their budgets that were way over than what we really had to allocate. I envision those meetings to be more, yes, this was our request, but this is what we have to work with. And now we're going to talk about making that work and what those cuts will be, what that will mean for the departments. I think those meetings will be a lot more meaningful for us, and starting those conversations early, like early March. That's when we start talking about the realities, not waiting until the week before, 2 weeks before we have to post the warrant.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Zach.
I guess the other question is, how deep in the weeds should we be getting? I mean, going back to Mike's original comments, where if he comes to us and says, we have 3%, should we just go to the school department? Mike goes to his staff and say, you have 3%. That's what you need to submit. I mean, is it our purview to say, well, let's trade a janitor for a janitor at the town hall, or firefighter for a school teacher?
I mean, according to the financial policy manual, it's the select board's job to do that.
But I haven't seen it,
And that
correct me if I haven't seen it happen. But I'm saying, if this was the money we have, I think would save everybody a lot of time, aggravation, and go, and start the FinCom's meeting with our revenue meeting, and then go back to them and say, our anticipated revenue is this. Please present a 3%, 4%, 2%, 1% budget to the FinCom by this date. This would save a whole lot of that, and they know, we're not the school committee. The school committee needs to figure it out. If that's all the money there is, that's all there is. The police and fire chief and Mike units need to figure it out. That's all the money there is. So I'm kind of on both sides of this myself, you know, are we going back and forth, pounding our heads against the wall of the same stuff over here, every year? And regardless of what happens in the election Sunday, we're still gonna be in that same position. You know, I think we should reverse the tables and say, this is the money we have, present us a budget for X, Y, Z, and take it from there.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Sandy.
Yeah, I think to your point, Paula, that the select board, I feel like we've been arguing about this for years, right? I watched the meetings years ago. I heard it when I was on the Charter Commission, that people just didn't necessarily agree on what their roles were, right? And have that strong understanding. So I think that's kind of, you know, step one. And personally, you know, as according to the charter, according to, as you said, the financial policy, the select board should be setting the priorities for the budget and deciding, okay, well, you know, I'm gonna give more to the police instead of the, you know, Parks and Rec, or whatever it happens to be. Those kinds of decisions are really not in our purview. And the select board and then the school committee for the schools really should be deciding on those priorities. And I don't know how they decide on those priorities without the full picture of what the level services request would be. So I think whoever decides on, you know, what those priorities are and how that money is going to be allocated needs to see what the requests are, what the level services looks like, so they know maybe one department doesn't need that much money, you know, and one department needs far more, so you can kind of go from there. But I would agree with what you said, that, you know, I think the three boards, that's to me my biggest thing, is I'd like to see the three boards working together. I know we meet together, but kind of establishing who's doing what.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I feel like our we started meeting more frequently with joint meetings last year, and I feel like most of them were kind of all the same conversation. You know, the school talking about the situation they were in with what they needed for level services, but versus what the reality was going to be, and there was no solution. There was no, I don't know. Yeah, there was no solution to how we were going to move forward with it. The only option was, you know, the potential override. That's what we were coming to. So yeah, I think that as a finance committee, you know, we're going through the budgets, you know, to be fiscally responsible as possible for our town, but we do need to kind of adhere to the elected officials, our select board, about what the priorities are for the town.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Zach.
So based on that, should our policy then be that we're not gonna take up any budgets until the select board reviews them first and gives us some kind of direction? Or let them vote on the budgets first prior to us, if they're the ones that's supposed to be setting the direction? Because that's not currently what's happening.
Right, because Mike, they didn't review the budgets till like that very last minute this past spring. So would that be logistically possible if they're able to review them prior to the start of our meetings in the spring, or technically winter?
Yeah, they could. I think the big thing is that, as you said, the select board can give priorities and let you know what their priorities are. Then it's up to me to develop a budget meeting those priorities to present to you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Andy.
On those lines, Zach, I completely agree that select board should be looking at things before us in terms of that whole article with the sewer, which I know is coming up later tonight. For us to have spent 3 meetings discussing it, and then gets to a select board meeting and they decide to pull it, I think that was, you know, super frustrating and definitely not an efficient use of our time. So I think that since select board does have the final say on which articles go on the town meeting warrant, that those things should go to them before coming to us.
So Mike, will you mention that to them tomorrow night?
I will.
Yeah, and I can envision maybe, you know, the select board receiving the requests, you know, and the realities of the budgets, you know, in February, early March, whatever. And then maybe they meet and discuss them, and then we do a joint meeting, like the next week or the next, you know, couple weeks after that, to kind of all get on the same page together, before we're starting to delve into the budgets. That's kind of how I'm envisioning this to happen, like timeline wise, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Bonnie?
Hi,
Chime
thank
in.
you. I know, trying to include myself on the phone. So one of the things I just thought of this a few minutes ago, so it's a little bit past the point of this part of the conversation, but wanted to just be thinking about, given all the things that we've been talking about in terms of the budget, that we also need to think about the turnbacks and the free cash for October and sort of what our policy will be around that. If we're going to start to think about things differently in the spring, I think we also need to sort of pre-plan for the fall as well, because obviously there's going to be every department not getting what they need in a lot of cases, or having to make cuts, and so we'll have to figure out how we're going to deal with the money that we will have in the fall, and how that will be sort of divided up.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for bringing us back to that, Bonnie, because yeah, we do need to discuss that as well, how we're going to handle supplemental budget requests for the fall. Thoughts on that?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Sandy.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to just again establishing a policy for free cash in general, and that would then, and ideally having that in place before the fall, and then
Mhm.
applying that to, right, to the fall supplements. And again, I'm a fan of having the three boards all have to approve anything that's a not a one-time expense. It's an ongoing expense, using free cash for that.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Bonnie.
And I agree, Sandy, and it's the same principle of not sort of wasting anybody's time, and, you know, having people come to us with things that are recurring for the October meeting, because if we make that a policy, we need everyone to know that well in advance, to know that that's not going to be a possibility.
So I think that when we know what the turnbacks will be, and if those turnbacks are, you know, legitimate, not that there wouldn't be illegitimate, but legitimate turnbacks that weren't like one-time things, like the health insurance holiday. You know, those turnbacks, that free cash, I would think would be fine for us to use for budget supplements, in my opinion. I don't know if you all agree with that, because they were budgeted items anyway. But for the one-time things, the one-offs that might be getting turned back, you know, I think that would be something that we wouldn't want to be using free cash for. And if the select board wanted to, I feel like it would be their call.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Zach.
I agree with everything you're saying. We just gotta be careful that we don't paint ourselves into the corner. Because, you know, regardless of what happens this weekend, budgets are gonna be tight. And, you know, we've juggled a lot of things over the years to, you know, to make it work. And it's not pretty, and nobody likes it, but we've made, you know, we've juggled it and we've made it work. So we just gotta be careful that we don't paint ourselves in the corner. And the second thing is, I need to drop off this call because I'm already late to picking up my son. So
All
there's
right,
nothing,
thank you, Zach.
there's none other votes. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and we will talk in the fall.
Zach, is your son doing okay?
My son is recovering nicely. Thank you, Chief, for reaching out and asking also.
I'm glad to hear that. Still in my thoughts.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night, Zach. All right, anyone else? Free cash, budget schedule, hopes and dreams.
I think you covered it all.
I think.
Oh,
Okay.
Madam Chair, when will you know the makeup of the actual FinCom? I know Zach got reappointed, right? Who's missing?
So Tracy also got reappointed.
Okay.
Sorry, that's right, you weren't here at the beginning. So Joe Parker and Cody Thompson are no longer on our board. So we have 2 seats open that, currently Jack, is going to be, interviewing candidates, for those seats and, plans to fill them sometime this summer, definitely before we start meeting again in September.
Thank you.
Right. If no one has anything else about our financial policies, our budget schedule, we will, approve 3 meeting minutes, please. Mike, you have nothing else for us?
No,
All right,
good night.
you enjoy your summer.
You too. Thanks.
Talk
Bye.
soon.
Madam Chair, do we have to talk about the sewer subcommittee?
Oh,
And
yes, it's on the
Elm Street.
agenda.
Yeah, just on that, I know Paul in advance, wants to start a subcommittee to look at the Elm Street sewer project. And he's looking for, someone to be on there from planning, select board, finance committee, the assessors, water and sewer commission. So if anyone's interested, let Paul know who you pick.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Bill.
what's the expected time commitment to that?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I would imagine you'd probably be looking at least 3 or 4 meetings before the October town meeting.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Andy.
I would volunteer if nobody else wants to.
All right, anybody else? Do we have to vote on this, Mike?
You don't have to, but you might as well if someone wants to. I would.
Okay. Anyone else want to be nominated? Okay, I nominate Sandy to be on the sewer subcommittee for Elm Street project.
Second,
Right. Take a quick vote. Who's left here? Bonnie? Bonnie? Steve?
Yes, just with regular report outs to our committee.
Yes. Tracy?
Sorry, Paula.
Yes. Bonnie?
Sorry,
Is
couldn't
that a
unmute
yes?
myself. That is me, and yes, I'm a yes.
All right. Tracy?
Yes.
Bill?
yes.
I too am a yes. Sandy, I don't know if you can vote for yourself. All right, congratulations. You have a job.
Congratulations. That's 3 or 4 meetings a week until October, I said, right?
Will Paul reach out then to me? Mike?
Yes, he will. Thank you. Good night.
All right, thank you, Mike. Good night. Okay, meeting minutes. First meeting is March 18th. Anyone have any edits for these minutes?
Madam Chair, record me as a yes for that vote as well.
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you.
Any edits from anyone on March 18th, or are we approving as written?
Joe is always our editor.
I put in a couple edits in these minutes before I sent them to you. I just thought it would speed things up. They were like minor things. All right. The chair would entertain a motion to approve these minutes from March 18th.
So moved.
Okay,
Second,
motion in a second. Steve,
yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes,
Bonnie?
Yes.
I too am a yes. Okay, and March 25th, the second set of minutes. Any edits for this one?
Madam Chair? Sorry, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
Bonnie? Yep,
Did you say March 18th? Was the date of the last minutes we just approved?
the date of the last minutes we just approved was March 18th, yes.
Okay, just want to make sure because I was gone the week before. No problem. Thank you.
Yep, you are absent for the March 25th ones, which is what we're looking at right now.
Right, so I'll just abstain. If there are enough votes.
I think we'll be fine, yeah.
Make a motion,
Sure.
Madam Chair?
Yes. Okay, I made a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
Second. All right. Steve,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes,
Bill,
Yes.
Bonnie, abstain,
I'm abstaining, yes.
okay. And I am a yes. Okay, and then one more, April 1st. Any edits?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Tracy.
I believe they had Ms. Parker instead of Mr. Parker. Several paragraphs.
Oh, yeah, I see that on
It's
page
on,
1 for sure. Oh, wait, no, is that? Oh, that's referring to, the library director.
was it Alice? What is it?
Lee
Yeah.
Parker.
Yeah, that's referring to, the library director, Lee.
Okay,
Yes, on those paragraphs. I'm looking at them right now. Yep. All right, anyone else? Or the
Motion to
changes?
accept.
All right. Motion from Paul, is there a second?
Second?
Okay, Steve?
Yes.
Steve, you were not at this meeting though. Do you want to still say yes?
I'll say yes.
Okay, Tracy,
yes.
Sandy,
yes,
Bill,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
okay, and I too am a yes. All right, thank you all. Anything else before we adjourn? Okay, hearing nothing. 8:26, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, Steve,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Sandy,
yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
I too am a yes. Okay. Good night, everyone. We will see you in a month or two.
Enjoy your summer.
Yes,
safe.
you too.
Thank you all.